would be honored if you would join us.
Greetings, and welcome to another Film Stories with Dan Cooper. Let's hit the clip. So, Fight Club, no jokes about first or second roles. Released in 1999, was a relatively high-budget tale about toxic masculinity and the evils of consumerism. Interesting subject matter given the proclivities of Hollywood at that time. The story of Fight Club, though, really begins with another Fox and David Fincher collaboration, David Fincher, of course, being the director of Fight Club. And that collaboration was Alien 3, which I'm sure we'll get a look at some point. It's common knowledge that David Fincher's experience when helming that third film in the Alien sci-fi horror franchise was not a pleasant experience at all. Constant studio interference would be putting it rather mildly, and Fincher didn't just swear off working with Fox ever again. He reportedly considered actually giving up feature film direction altogether and going back to commercials and to music videos, especially where he was in the early 90s exceedingly successful, directing videos for Michael Jackson, Madonna, back when they were at the peak of their fame. But however, since that career low with Alien 3, Fincher had gone on to make Seven, which was really successful, and The Game with Michael Douglas. And he bounced back from that nadir to fashion a brace of films that were really successful critically and whilst also making considerable money. And that's the real film story that I want to focus on in this episode, though. It's the process of Fincher going back to Fox. What possesses a director who's clearly in demand to return to work for a company who made his life so difficult just a few years earlier? And most interestingly, I suppose, how does that director ensure that the same thing doesn't happen again? So put simply, it was right, ultimately, that drew Fincher back into partnership with Fox. There's a Comic-Con interview out there online from a few years ago when he remembers getting a call from a production partner of his who asked him to read a novel that very night. Fincher, who by all reports isn't a particularly avid reader, questioned why he was reading a novel on that very night until he was told that if he didn't read it that night and make a call on it, then there was a good chance that Fox would be snapping up the rights tomorrow. So, and they'd have to act quickly, were he and his production company to beat Fox to the punch. You can imagine, I suppose, that getting one over Fox at that point in his career would have been quite an appealing prospect, given his treatment at the hands of that company during the production of Alien 3, and so Fincher did duly read it that night. The book, of course, was Fight Club. He loved it, and he informed his team to get straight on to getting the rights. But they were too late. Fox had already snapped up those rights, and they owned the Fight Club, the rights to make Fight Club into a motion picture, and thus Fincher was foiled. He decided that was that, dismissing out of hand the possibility of working with the studio again, but those around him began to talk about the possibilities of doing just that. They told him that Fox wasn't the same company now under Bill Mechanic, and that the company was geared towards collaborating and building partnerships with filmmakers in a similar manner to, say, a Warner Brothers, and promised him that it was a different company to the one he worked for just a few years before. Fincher really wanted to do the film, and so his production team ultimately pitched a $20 million adaptation of Fight Club to Fox, and then sat down and figured out the kind of film that they wanted Fight Club to be. By the time they had got around to doing that and got back to Fox, the movie had grown in size considerably to $50 million as a budget, and it had now had Brad Pitt and Edward Norton attached. And Fincher met with Fox at a restaurant, and again, he talks about this fairly frequently and openly. They presented the budget, the outline, and the stars that were attached, and the cost, and then pretty much just gave Fox 72 hours, to use Fincher's term. He gave them 72 hours, a 3-day window to make up their minds. And crucially, having learned the hard way from his experience in Alien 3, where he very much lost control of the picture, Fincher demanded that once Fox had given script approval, cast approval, and budget approval, then there could be no further meddling from the studio. It's worth noting at this point that the film was scheduled to be released under the Fox 2000 imprint. That division within Fox was designed to premiere less mainstream, more edgy affair, and it seemed perfect for a film so iconoclastic as Fight Club. The late Laura Ziskin, who was heading up the Fox 2000 division at that point, she was an ardent supporter of the film. Fincher's desire to provoke with Fight Club, if you've seen Fight Club, then you'll know that it is something of a provocative film, and that's putting it mildly. Even though Ziskin was an ardent supporter, Fincher's desire to push the envelope as far as it could tested even her patience. There's quite an infamous line in the film following a post-coitus scene between Brad Pitt's Tyler Durden and Helena Bonham Carter's Marla Singer, in which Laura Ziskin begged Fincher to take that scene out, a particular line. He reminded her that he had final say, and he refused. She begged him some more and begged him to let the test audience decide. He agreed grudgingly, and when they tested it, the audiences loved the line. But still, she asked him to take it out, and he agreed, but only if he could choose the line that went back in and replaced the original line, which was so terribly offensive. And she agreed. So Fincher, of course, he's called Fight Club an act of sedition, the process of making it an act of sedition. So Fincher, of course, put in an even more controversial line, just to really rile up his studio masters. And when Laura Ziskin begged him to change it back, he refused. And it was that provocative nature of Fight Club that saw it perhaps stumble at the box office, certainly with the critics. It failed to recoup its budget upon release. Both Pitt and Fincher tell these interesting stories about the film's premiere at the Venice Film Festival, where the film was really looked down upon by members of the audience for essentially creating a piece of filth. The telling thing, I suppose, is though that as Fincher and Pitt recount these stories, they seem to find it incredibly funny, which gives you an insight into the idea that perhaps that's insulting their audience. It was perhaps what they always were aiming for. Critics were nonplussed. Roger Ebert wasn't a fan. The Guardian's Peter Bradshaw was particularly unhappy with the film. And it's fair to say that in the kind of 20 years since the film's release, many critics have reassessed it in light of it had an incredibly strong half-life on DVD and Blu-ray. I think it sold 13 million copies on DVD by the time they asked Fincher to make the Blu-ray, or to contribute towards the Blu-ray, which is a pretty incredible number. But not only because the film found its audience on the home video market, but also because given the state of the world in the last 2 decades since the film's release, you've got corporate greed has come to the fore, the collapse of the financial system, the outing of toxic masculinity with all the Me Too movement. A lot of the questions and points that Fight Club was either parodying or raising seem to have come to the fore since. So maybe it just was that the film was ahead of its time. Not everyone agrees, though, and it's mentioned Peter Bradshaw of The Guardian, and when questioned recently, he still said that he thought it wasn't a great film and felt the same way about it as he did originally. Fight Club is a lot of things to a lot of people, I suppose. It's a film that I admire it the more I watch it, but perhaps like it less the more I watch it, which is a strange combination. It's a film that has a wonderful artistic merit, but there's this black hole at the centre of it, which Fincher was drawn to, I suppose, for his very dark humour, but given everything that's happened in the world since, I'm not so sure it's funny anymore. It does, though, contain one of my favourite film stories ever, of a somewhat green director who'd been treated rather shabbily by a studio, more than getting his own back, and when his star was in the ascendancy, and doing it with just a modicum of style. Talk of Fight Club 2 has bubbled under for quite some time. It did appear in a graphic novel format. I wasn't really a fan of that, but who knows? Fincher, of course, is probably making World War Z, so that's one sequel with Brad Pitt in tow, so you never know. Hopefully you enjoyed that video, that little film story there. You can find us on Twitter, filmstories.pod. Website is www.filmstories.co.uk, or you can find us on Facebook at Film Stories Online. Please do like, subscribe, comment, wait from a safe distance, whatever you feel happy with, we're happy to. Take it easy, and we'll see you here soon for another Film Stories.